Hello and welcome back to another video. As you can tell by the title, this one is a review of the Fujifilm XT4. I've owned this camera for around 9 months now, and I thought I would finally share some opinions on it. Some likes and dislikes, or pros and cons, and whether I think it is worth getting this camera going into 2025. So be sure to stick around so you can hear everything that I have to say about this camera, and if you want to see more videos like these, then subscribe, or you can go and watch some of my older videos. Also, Merry Christmas to everyone, because this is coming out on Christmas Day, and yeah, it just happened to line up with my upload schedule. Anyway, I'll quickly explain why I bought the Fujifilm XT4. Back in October 2023, I was using my Fujifilm X Pro 3 to record all of my videos. It wasn't a great setup since the camera wasn't designed for video recording, and it had some major limitations such as no articulating screen and a pretty small record limit. Obviously I knew this when I bought the camera. I didn't buy it to be a video camera, but as I started uploading on YouTube regularly, I just had to make do with what I had. So my X Pro 3 became my video camera for about a year. I loved this camera for photo work and I thought that it would stay with me forever, but my needs changed and I needed a better video camera. I wanted one with a fully articulating screen and a longer record limit. I originally was going to get the Sony A7C, but after MPB decided to say that my X Pro 3 was in good condition rather than excellent condition, which was just an absolute lie, they just wanted to send me less money I guess, because they done that, the A7C ended up being out of my price range. So instead of that camera, I ended up having to settle for the A7 III. This camera solved my recording limit issue, as I'm pretty sure it could record up to 30 minutes in 4K, but it still didn't have a fully articulating screen. However, I overlooked the lack of flippy screen because I wanted the full frame sensor, because I was hoping that this A7 III could be a good hybrid from my video camera and my GFX, which was my photo camera. But after using this camera for around 8 or 9 months, I realised that it just wasn't for me. I desperately needed that flippy screen for videos, the camera also felt a bit too computer-like, and the resolution of the viewfinder was so low that it started to hurt my eyes every time I used it. So in April of 2024, I sent off my A7 III and I got myself this Fujifilm XT4, which is very beaten up. It's got like a bunch of paint missing on the back, but to be honest, I don't care, it works and that's all I needed to do. And it still looks pretty anyway, it's just a well-designed camera. But after recording my first few videos, I realised how much I loved this camera. It was exactly what I needed for these videos, and it's been really beneficial for me these last 9 months. At first, I didn't really use this camera much for taking photos, as I was using my GFX a lot, but as time went on, I began to prefer the smaller form factor and the ability to use autofocus lenses. So I began picking up my XT4 to take photos whenever I was going out instead of my GFX, and after about 9 months of usage, I finally feel comfortable giving some opinions on this camera. So without further ado, I'll get into the pros and cons of the Fujifilm XT4. And the first pro has to be the size and weight of the camera. It's light and portable, and it's just perfect if you want a very capable camera in a small package. I've used my fair share of cameras that are small and capable, but to be honest, I think this one is second from the top. Like I mentioned before, I started picking this camera over my Fujifilm GFX because of the size and weight. It was just so much more convenient. Although the GFX has superior image quality and a lens that makes really unique images, I was just constantly picking up this XT4 because it was so much less of a burden. Having this camera around your neck for hours at a time feels like nothing because it's so light, and it's really easy to use in those situations where you only have one hand free. The only camera that I can think of that is more portable and more convenient than the XT4 that I've used for an extended period of time is the Fujifilm X100V. But the size and weight isn't actually too different. I think the XT4 is just a bit heavier, but the X100V definitely has better weight distribution. Moving on to the second pro, we have the resolution of the camera, or the camera sensor. The XT4 has a 26.1 megapixel sensor, and personally I think that the range from 24 megapixels to 26 megapixels is the perfect amount. This range gives you superb image quality, decent file size, and the ability to crop if you need to. I don't really want to talk about resolution very much as I don't print very often and I really only post to social media. But in my opinion, you can't beat the resolution to file size ratio that this range of megapixels provides. The third pro of the Fujifilm X-T4 is that classic Fujifilm handling. I'm sure you've heard about this many times before, but Fujifilm cameras just feel and handle unlike any other camera. I don't want to spend too much time on this topic as it's said in pretty much every video about a Fujifilm camera, so I'll be as quick as possible. The dials on these cameras not only look good, but they function just as well. You will find yourself using these dials to change your camera controls rather than the standard scroll wheels on the front and back of the camera. They feel as film-like as you can get with a digital camera, and it truly feels like you're changing a physical setting of the camera rather than just changing a piece of code. The buttons on the camera also feel very premium, and I would even say that they feel more premium than the X-T5. Some of them have a nice squish where others are a little harder to the touch. It's a nice balance, and it's unlike some cameras which have the same feel on every single button. The menus are super easy to navigate, and in my opinion they are the most intuitive to use if you are an amateur. Yes, I think they are even better than Canon menus, which I think most people will disagree with me on. But it's just how I feel about them. I remember getting my Fujifilm X Pro 3 out the box, and within 15 to 20 minutes I was feeling rather comfortable with the menus, and it just made sense to me the way they were set out. The next pro is really just a benefit over the Sony a7 III, and that benefit is the viewfinder resolution. The X-T4 has a viewfinder resolution of 3.69 million dots, which is a massive upgrade over the Sony a7 III's 2.5 million dots? I think it's that. Oh no, it's even worse, it's 2.3 million dots. You can get much higher resolution viewfinders than the one on this X-T4, but to be honest, I think that this range is just perfect for 99% of people. There's also something about Fujifilm viewfinders that I really like. It's the same with every one that I've used. They don't feel like you're staring at a screen. Like, they do in some sense, but it feels less of a screen and less digital than other cameras, which sounds really stupid, I know. But if you use like a Sony viewfinder or a Canon viewfinder, and then you use a Fujifilm viewfinder, you'll most likely prefer the Fujifilm viewfinder. After the viewfinder resolution, the next pro is the lens selection. Fujifilm arguably has the best selection of APS-C lenses out right now. There is a lens option for everything you need, and the mount is opened up to third-party manufacturers, so you can get some pretty unique lenses. You have your standard range of zooms, your basic prime lenses, your fast prime lenses, your ultra wide angles, and even your like super fast prime lenses, like the Mythicon 35mm f/0.95. The X mount has just a wide range of 0.95 lenses, and they probably aren't the sharpest, but they do create some very unique results. I don't know any other manufacturer has a lens selection this good that is dedicated for APS-C cameras. I guess Sony would demolish it if you consider all the lenses made for full frame that you can use on the crop sensor cameras, but if we're specifically talking about dedicated APS-C lenses, then I think Fujifilm just like takes a top place. Correct me on that if I'm wrong in the comments. And the final pro is that articulating screen. I know a lot of people hate on fully articulating screens and they just call them selfie screens, but I find them so useful for photography and video. They are really useful if you need to get a low angle portrait or if you have your camera in a bit of a weird position. To be fair, they're just useful if you're shooting in portrait orientation like at all. If your camera is in any position other than your eye and you want to take a portrait orientation image, I think that fully articulating screens are, second to best, other than like the GFX screen, which can pull out and then like flip up as well. So I think that, fully articulating screens for portrait orientation images are second to the best of that. But if we're talking about landscape orientation images, then I can see what people are talking about, as it is a bit annoying, but people really overreact about how annoying flippy screens are for landscape images. All you have is a little bit extra of the screen on the outside. But this screen is also just so helpful for video recording. Like, I can see myself right now, I can see that I'm still recording, I can see the record limit that I have left, I can also see that my framing is decent, I can see everything that I need to see. But if I didn't have that, then video recording, yourself at least, will be so much more difficult. Anyway, that's the end of the pros. I now just quickly want to touch on the only negative thing that I've experienced while shooting this XT4 over the past 9 months. And that one con is the autofocus. I found that for the most part the autofocus on this camera does its job well, but every now and again it really struggles to focus on a not difficult scene. The camera will just have a meltdown and completely forget how to focus. And this has happened to me on portraits and landscapes. It also gets so much worse when the subject is moving even just the slightest bit. For example, I was in the car with Jen, we were driving along a road, and then in the gap of these trees, a big mountain appeared, and I was like, oh my god, that is just the most Wales looking scene ever. So I brought my camera up to my eye, put the focus point on the mountain, which was far enough away so where it wasn't really moving very much, but it was still taking up a lot of the scene. There wasn't like loads of clouds in the way, it was just, you know, a good image and a very easy one to focus on. But the camera just had a meltdown because the foreground was moving even though it wasn't in the area of the focus point, and I just got a blurry mess because the camera was focusing at the minimum focus distance for some reason, so it was just a mess. So it's pretty stupid that that happened, and I've had multiple other occasions that have been like that. It's even worse with portraits sometimes, like if you want to take a portrait of someone, they're standing still, there's a lot of contrast on your subject, so it should be able to easily pick up those contrasty bits and focus, but for some reason it just completely misses, and it's just really weird. Thankfully the autofocus is good enough most of the time, so this isn't really a deal breaker. Anyway, those were the pros and cons, and we're almost at the end of the video. I just want to finish this video off with giving my thoughts on whether or not the XT4 is worth it going into 2025. And to be honest, I'm not sure. It's great value for money, especially on the used market, and with the price range that you're looking at, you have amazing specs. But depending on your needs, it might be worth saving up a bit more to get the XT5, the XH2 or the XH2S if you want to stick with Fujifilm. But if you're wanting a more than capable camera at a cheaper price point and you don't mind missing out some features that those cameras have, then the XT4 is a brilliant one to go with. I can't see myself getting rid of this camera for the foreseeable future, as it perfectly fits my video needs, and it also is really good as a small carry whenever I want a camera with me. But that will be the end of the video, and I hope you've enjoyed. I've been recording for quite a long time, so I'm sorry if this video is super long. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.